Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyan, your host. And today we're going to talk about how a lot of businesses find something that works and then they just do more of it. More leads, more activity, more effort. But at some point, it stops working in the way it used to. And today we're digging into why that happens with my friend Matt Remuzzi. He's the founder of CapForge. He's built and scaled a firm to over 70 employees, maybe more than that today. He's coming back for a repeat of his earlier appearance. He's been serving clients across the country, doing great work. Matt, welcome back. I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, we were talking about the weather and how it's crazy here in Michigan sometimes. But it's getting green and the buds are blooming. But in San Diego, he says you can't complain about the weather, and I agree. It's beautiful in San Diego.
Yes.
Last time we talked, you were very clear about how partnerships outperform ads. At one point, does that approach start to strain or break as the business grows?
It's tough to maintain personal relationships across
Mhm.
100 people, right? You can do it very well with 10, 12, even 20 starts to get tough, right? If you check in with somebody once a month and you've got 20 people that you're checking in with, that you really, that's one day a month and there you've used the entire month, right? So you get past that, it's tough to have a close, friendly, one-on-one relationship with many more people than that. But if the business is continuing to grow and there's more partnerships out there that would make sense to be involved with, then you either have to have other people that are going to be able to grow those partnerships, right? So me as the owner of the firm, I kind of tap out and then I have
Mhm.
some of the senior people here develop relationships the same way that I have. So that way we can, but ultimately there's a finite number of good, close personal relationships you can have with partners for any firm. So at that point, I find you kind of have to pick and choose. Maybe one that was good a few years ago used to deliver a lot of really warm, great leads, has dropped off. And maybe that's one that
Mhm.
you kind of let fall to the second or third tier, and there's another better one you can replace it with. But that's a great example of something that you simply can't scale past a certain level, personally at least, because there just
Yeah.
isn't enough time in the day.
Yeah, and you being the founder and the owner, it's difficult to clone yourself.
Right.
And so you have to think about that too. And you have a certain way of going about things, a certain way of approaching relationships. And you have a funnel, you have a process that you use to bring clients in. And you need to teach your team how to do that. And then that takes time. And so that gets harder and harder as you go. What do you think might be the hidden costs of doubling down on just what works early on? What's that costing them when someone works on that sort of thing and they start missing opportunities? What's that about?
I think you can get sidelined with what you started with that worked well, and you miss the opportunities that could have been much bigger, easier to scale, easier to grow, maybe even more profitable because you just wanted to keep doing what you had seen work in the early days. We had that experience. We, at one point, pretty early on, discovered a niche of clients that were buying real estate, just raw land, and then they'd buy large lots and then they'd subdivide it and sell small lots. And there was a pretty active community of these guys, and we got in with them, and it seemed like a good way to go. They were all had businesses, had a need for accounting that we could try and we thought we could help with. And we spent a fair amount of time invested there. As it turned out, their needs were large, but their budgets were small. And
Mhm.
they were a lot of work for not a great return. And fortunately, we figured that out reasonably quickly, but I definitely spent a lot more time trying to solve problems there than I probably should have. And so, had I not
Yeah.
been really focused on trying to look for optimal fits rather than just ones we could. It was great because we could close the leads, right? We could make sales, but the sales themselves, you have to ask yourself, are these the sales you really want? So I think a lot of
Yeah.
business owners can fall into that trap of, oh, this is the kind of thing I do because I've done it before and I can do it again. But if you take a step back, you go, is that really the best thing you could be doing? Are those really the ideal clients? Is that really the best way for you to move forward? And a lot of times the answer is probably not.
Especially if you don't measure the kind of result and return you're getting on the effort that you're putting into it. And the other thing is that we talked about last time was versus quantity of your leads. And so how do you go about that? We're not just talking about tactics, but if you don't have, that's costing you, that really cost you some money there because those guys had all their money tied up in real estate and they didn't have the rest of their cash flow. It was in equity, building equity. Yeah. So partnerships and quality of leads. So you have to also have quality of partnerships. What breaks there when you're trying to, I guess you poked at it a little bit earlier. What breaks when you're trying to get better quality partnerships?
One of the things we had another experience relatively early on, seemingly a great partner, a firm that was helping business owners get launched into e-commerce, which is a space we had a lot of experience in. And again, they made a lot of introductions. We booked a lot of calls. We had a lot of conversations. But again, the mistake I'd made there was that a lot of these guys were still very early stage. They had some money to spend. They were willing to hire us and engage in services, but they had so many questions. They wanted so
Mm,
much time because they were so new to everything still. And each one was a little different. So even trying to put together, well, read the FAQs first or read this article first. Then if you still have questions, let us know. It turns out they still had questions. It was a torrential incoming flood of emails with questions. And it just, again, the dollars of the sales and the margins we could squeeze out of those sales just didn't account for the time that these guys were taking. So again, seemingly at first, it seemed like a good partnership. They were happy to introduce us. The leads were warm. The sales process was easy, but for what they wanted, which was a ton of information and one-on-one consulting, it just didn't pencil out. So I
yeah.
had to be careful again and back away from that without damaging the relationship, but in a way that allowed us to recapture our time.
Yeah, that comes down to service delivery there. And having one of my previous guests was talking about having a base set of, even though everything you do is custom, I have a lot of clients that are like that, everything's custom, but you do have the ability to have a base set of services that you offer. And those are set in stone. And then these are add-ons. This is an add-on. This is an add-on. So you have to, is that the approach that you took with them or did you have to move away from them?
What we did was because we had always been a firm that we felt like we want to give value first
Hmm.
to make sure to establish a good relationship and to demonstrate the value that we could bring to the table. But that kind of backfired because they were just so needy and so hungry for information, and we had to draw the line. So we put in place, so you get an initial consultation for free. And after that, here's the hourly rate. If you want to, you have more questions you would like us to help you with. And boy, that quickly cut off about 95% of the questions. As soon as they hit that paywall, they decided their questions weren't that burning anymore, that they were willing to pay for answers and help. But yes, it's just one of those things you learn as you go. You understand the general theory, but then the reality, the rubber hits the road and you go, oh, okay, I see how I could have done this better or how I need to change this to make it work because my initial thinking, I just didn't realize what I was setting myself up for.
Yeah. So you really have to look at, well, you have to look at a lot when you bring on someone new. So you better do your research to make sure that what you can offer and what you deliver lines up with what they need or maybe with what they want. They don't always, you sometimes have to give them what they want before and give them what they need because they're sometimes two different things.
And in this particular case too, some of it was the partner that we had in this case. They were doing a good job of promoting us as far as, hey, talk to these guys. They're smart, but they went too far. They said, hey, ask them anything. They can help you. They'll help you as much as you need. They'll help you with anything you want. They're fantastic, which of course we initially had said, hey, we're happy to help, but they promoted us as a one-stop font of information, unlimited access. No, that's not really what we wanted to put out here. So there was some recalibration of expectations with the partner who was doing the promotion as much as the people they were sending.
So you need to have a system for them too.
Yes.
Teach them how to promote you. We talked about getting leads, so getting referrals. And even when you get good leads, how did at some point they fail to turn into business? And what happened there with usually missing?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time over the years really refining our discovery call process. It
Mhm.
used to be, do you have something we can offer? If you do, great. Here's our offer. Here's our price. But we learned over time again that what happens with that is you sometimes close sales that you don't really want. They're not really a good fit, although they need something that we can deliver. We need
Mhm.
to be deeper and more specific and better at setting expectations and better at filtering who's a good fit, because otherwise you end up getting leads and turning those into paying clients that aren't really the paying clients that you should be taking. So our discovery call process
Mm.
has gotten a lot better. It's great that we get a lead in and they're seemingly qualified and they're seemingly a fit, but with 30 minutes of additional Q&A and kind of understanding and poking around at what it is they specifically are looking for in their expectations versus what we can deliver and our ability to meet those expectations, we've avoided a lot of situations where we probably could have gotten them to sign an agreement, but it wouldn't have been a great fit for either of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes when you're first starting out, you take on clients that aren't a good fit because you need cash flow. But as
Yes.
you mature, at every level you mature, you need to keep doing what you're saying you're doing is saying, okay, we need a better discovery call process. We need a better onboarding process. We need to have basic services. We need to have gates. We need to have add-ons and structure to our offer, even though we can be really flexible, but you have to put those things into place. And then once you grow further, you outgrow what you've already put into place. And are you finding that same thing that are you at a point right now where you're rebuilding something? What are you doing today, these days?
Yeah. So one of the things that's new for us, we always had a process where we would do a discovery call and then we would put together a proposal and send it over to the client. And that worked reasonably well. We had, we're happy with the close rate and our discovery call process got better. But what we've recently we're changing over to now is a process of rather than do the discovery call and send a proposal, what we're doing is we're doing the discovery call and then we're sending a proposal with three options. So
Mhm.
rather than trying to say, great, I've heard what you have said. Here's what I think we can do for you. Here's our price for this service. And then now it's a yes or no question for the client, right? Do I either accept this proposal or do I say no? It seems like in our industry at least, and I think probably widely applies, rather than say, here's a proposal, the end, you have the yes or no option, right? You say, here's a proposal with three choices, right? There's the core services that would fit your basic needs. There's the growth plan option that's got more to it and answers more of those pain points that came up in the discovery call. And of course, it costs a little bit more. And there's a premium option where we really go full tilt to help you achieve the goals and address those pain points that came up in the discovery call. But of course, that's the most expensive option and that gives you the most things. And now the question instead of is, do you want the proposal? Do you want to sign on as a client? Yes or no? It's which of these is the best fit. The theory, of course, is that hopefully the close rates go up, one, and two, we're signing up clients, at least some portion of clients for the medium and the high end service and making more out of each lead and each client engagement, each lifetime client value goes up significantly because instead of a binary choice, it's really now it's one of three. And hopefully no is only one of now four choices, right? You go no, basic, core, growth. We'll see how it
Yeah.
goes, but at least in theory, it seems like this could help us close more clients and close more higher value clients just by giving them an option rather than trying to get them on board at the basic level and then maybe upselling them down the road, bringing these choices to the forefront right at the beginning and giving them more options at the first engagement.
Yeah. Is that just rolling out now, or have you gotten some feedback?
It's just rolling out now. We're just putting the finishing touches on being able to send out these proposals with multiple options versus just the one.
Yeah, that's a interesting way of positioning yourself instead of yes or no. It's which of these is the best fit. And obviously there can be a no also. Yeah. And I imagine you have some sort of pricing strategy where the medium isn't really that far from the basic, and the premium really isn't that much of a stretch more. So really that that makes the premium look attacked as odd. The basic's not for me. I want one of these two, which is I think going to be effective. I hope it will be. I'd like to hear back from you on how that works for you.
I think it will be also. I just from personal experience, right? If you've ever gone to shop for a new car, not by accident, I think. They always take you to the one that's the completely tricked out, right? It's got all the bells and whistles. It's got the vibrating heated seat and the
Mm.
entertainment system and the 21-inch rims and everything else. And you go, well, that wasn't in my budget. I wasn't planning on anything like that. But they go, okay, no problem. Let's show you here. Here's the mid-level model. And you go, oh, where are the heated seats? I don't like those.
Right.
And then they go, really, the base model was what I was budgeting. But then you look at that one, you go, it doesn't even have a radio. It's, oh, I don't
It's
know how
got
I could
cloth
live with
seats.
myself.
And you know what? You probably in San Diego, you probably don't care about this, but a heated steering wheel is a must have. Heated seats and heated steering wheel is a must have in Michigan. That's for sure.
I think that's some of the psychology that goes into that. So you go, here's the premium version. Here's everything we do for you. Now, if you want to take some of those things away, right, we've got a lower price package, but of course you're giving up some of those things. And if
Hmm.
you really still, that's too much, then there's a core package. That's just taking care of the basic needs. So hopefully again, the person, oh gosh, the core, that doesn't sound like enough, right? I don't know if I can go premium. Let's go with the middle one. And just by default there, we've increased the average customer value maybe 50% by having these three options and anchoring some of our pricing against the top option, right? The premium option to go, gosh, I wasn't expecting a number like that. No problem. Here's a lower number, which is lower than the top number, but still higher than we would have maybe come in under the original model of just a single proposal. So
Hmm.
it all seems like it should work out, but yeah, I can let you know in 6 months.
Yeah, that'd be great. So the evolution of CapForge, was there a point where growth created more problems than it solved?
Yeah, absolutely. Growing is its own challenge, right? People are say, oh, you're growing 50% year over year. You must be so happy. That must be so great. Yes, it's one of those, it's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem, right? You still
Hmm.
have to, when you're growing quickly, I think the hardest thing to keep is that high level of customer service, that high touch point that probably was a factor in your growth, right? Your initial clients loved you so much because you gave them so much attention. You were always available. You did a great job because you could really take the time to do those extras. Then they told a bunch of their friends and your marketing was successful. And now all of a sudden you've got a ton of clients and it's much harder to scale some of that high touch, high contact, high level of service quickly,
Hmm.
right? You can do it, but you've got to hire the right people. You've got to train them to be as good as you were. You've got to keep the right ratio of clients to service providers. And that doesn't necessarily happen at the same rate as growth. So that is absolutely a challenge that we've faced over the years at different points where we'd have a surge in growth of clients and we're trying to rush to scale up our level of service providers to continue to not have quality drop off or turnaround time drop off or response time drop off. And it's
Hmm.
it's not easy for sure.
Yeah, and what of those things you just mentioned, what was the thing that specifically broke when the problem surfaced? Was it
So yeah, I mean
your involvement or what?
response time to clients was the hardest thing to keep up
Hmm.
because it just as more clients come, the volume of emails and questions and concerns that they have increases and it can overwhelm the amount of staff you have to deal with those problems in a timely manner. And then inevitably have somebody who was the last on the list. They didn't get a response in the time they were hoping for. And then maybe that causes them to drop off or what have you. Absolutely. That timeliness of response, we could keep the quality up, but people got used to us getting back to their emails within a couple of hours. And that just wasn't always something we could maintain as we grew. And that was the struggle. We're back to that now, but
Mhm.
there have been periods of time during our growth where it just wasn't always something we could do. And that hurt us.
Responsiveness it's a requirement. If someone calls you, they find your ad or they get a referral and say, "Hey, I'm gonna reach out to them," and it's after hours, they're expecting a response right away. And they know you might be a 9 to 5 business, but they're still expecting a response. They don't care.
Right.
And if they go, and if you don't respond within a reasonable amount of time, you should have an instant response within a minute, within 5 minutes, I think. But if that's not realistic, at least the next morning. And even if obviously you can have an automated response, but there should be a human in the loop, those kinds of things, especially with not just your leads, but also your clients. Get them some sort of queue that you can manage. So every business has high points and low points. Hopefully you're on the rising scale. But tell us about a low point in your business where you're probably just starting out, but you really had some growing pains. You didn't know what to do, and something broke that you weren't expecting.
I can tell you a time, it was probably about 4 years into the business. We had gotten to a good size for that number of years in business. And what happened was we got hacked. I got one of
Mm,
those messages that say, all of your files are now under our control. You can pay
mhm.
us this much money, which was inconsiderable sum. It wasn't on the table. And if you don't within 24 hours, we're going to delete all your files. And of course, we're as a financial accounting firm, right? I was devastated to tell our clients, not only am I not going to be able to provide services for our, I don't, we'll have to reestablish all our connections, I'll have to regather all your information, or certainly I'd understand if you walked away from us because,
Mhm.
but then we also, the information we did have of yours has potentially been compromised. And I was beside myself with
Wow.
concern of how am I going to deal with this? At that time, I had 5 or 6 employees. I'm gonna have to lay everybody off. This is the end of our business. This is
Mhm.
devastating. I couldn't believe I'd gotten up that morning in a good mood and things were going well. And by lunchtime, it seemed like the business I'd been working on for 4 years was over. Uh,
Yeah.
and in my flurry of going around and contacting people, trying to figure out, is there anything I can do? It turned out that the IT guy that had set things up for us initially has, yes, our firewall has been breached. Yes, it looks like they do have control of the files. I can't do anything about that. But almost by accident, he had set up at one point a backup hard drive that was disconnected from the main system, but still kept a copy of everything that we had gotten up to that point. And
Mm.
that hadn't been compromised. So he immediately pulled that, disconnected it, shut our whole system down, reset everything, reloaded it with the new data, and we were essentially back in business,
Wow.
which was as unexpected as the pit that I fell into. Was there was a ladder to climb
Wow.
out. So the whole episode lasted basically from lunchtime until dinner time. And I went from having a good day to the business is over. I've got to tell 100+ clients it's horrible news, back to, hey, I think we're going to be okay. And it was just the most roller coaster day of my life, but obviously came away with some lessons from, and the whole thing, as it turned out, the reason that happened in the first place was one of the employees had clicked on an email they shouldn't have clicked on and opened an attachment that wasn't an attachment they should have opened. So
Mhm.
some lessons learned there, some additional safety mechanisms put in place. And of course, we kept that secret backup hard drive running in the event we ever needed it again.
Mhm.
But it was just one of those things, you can't believe how quickly things can go bad and how devastating they can be. And fortunately, I didn't have to learn that lesson the hard way,
Yeah.
as hard as it and bad as it could have been. But I
Could have been.
certainly took home some lessons from that day of how to do things better and how grateful I was that it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But boy, that was a rough few hours of,
Oh, I can feel your pain, brother.
oh, that was bad. That's as bad as
Uh,
it could be.
that's pretty bad. I had a similar thing happen in the business that I was responsible for. I was the chief information officer, and so I oversaw all the technology. I was also the chief architect of all of our systems, and I had a staff of 7 or 8 people. And my IT manager, he was managing the backups, and he mounted a backup over the top of live data, or he mounted a final file system over data, and it corrupted that data, and it took down half of our business overnight. And this was on a Sunday. And long story short, we were going, oh, we're gonna have to do this. Part of our business was online, and it was boom, just running like a clock. But this other part wasn't. And I forget which side it was, the airlines or the pharmaceutical companies. I don't know. I don't remember which. But yeah, I finally said, Mike, find a backup that works, and let's use that. Because there's a lot of theoretical stuff going on, and this happened. I said, let's just find a backup that works, and we'll go from there. And he did, and the system came back up for the other half of the business. But for 3 days, we were going, oh my gosh. There was $40 million in airline revenue alone that we were down for 3 days. And we were delivering bags to ever fly and you lose your bag.
Yes.
We have a network, or we did have a network of mom and pop vendors who sweep the airport and deliver the bags to you. Right. And we consolidate all that billing in an online system that I built. It's all audited, all standardized rates, everything's audited, electronic, paperless. And we send the airline an invoice for the whole network every 2 weeks. They pay us, we pay them. Anyways, that's how that thing worked. But that was down for 3 days. And of course, the vendors were calling and they can't get on. And oh my gosh. And I just about had a nervous breakdown. I remember being in a meeting and about what we were going to do and how we were going to recover from it. I sat down and I just started to lose it because I didn't know what to do. That's when I said, Mike, find a backup that works. But they closed the door so no one would see me breaking down. Oh my gosh. But anyways, and I know you can feel that pain because it's all
Yes.
on you. It's all
Yes.
on you. Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
So early CapForge that happened in the early days versus now. What had to be built behind the scenes to support that growth?
so we have our own bespoke, basically CRM project management system that we have from the very early days. Really is the engine behind our growth, because I knew right when I started, each accounting client that we have has a lot of moving parts. What accounts are we tracking for them? What banks, credit cards are they using? Where are they? All their information, essentially everything we have about that client and how often we work on their project and who worked on their project. There was no system at the time that would enable us to effectively track that and make sure nothing fell through the cracks, and enable me to make sure that we were spending the right amount of time, not too much, not too little, on each client, to maintain margins, to price it effectively, to make sure that we were delivering the quality of service that we had promised each of those clients. And as we scaled, I knew that Google Sheets and sticky notes wasn't going to cut it for very long
No.
with
Yeah.
with a client base like that. And there wasn't any real effective software that was going to do it for us at the time. So I found a programmer. I kind of laid out in Excel. I said, imagine I have a screen that looks like this with this information, another screen that looks like this with this information. Can you build something like that works in a database, works in the cloud, that we can scale and grow and have users with different permissions and everything else? And I've been working with the same guy now for 13 years, and it's been the engine behind our growth. And that's what we had to build in order to scale. If we hadn't had that, we wouldn't be anywhere where we are today. In fact, 99% of accounting firms are like 5 people or less, right? There's a CPA and a couple of admins and whatever, a bookkeeper maybe, or a bookkeeping firm has 3 or 4 bookkeepers and the owner or whatever. But I firmly believe that nearly all of them are stuck at that level, maybe partly because the owner's ambition sort of peaks there, but really
Hmm.
because they can't manage more clients than that without losing their minds, without losing track of key details and having things fall through the cracks.
You
And
need a good
us having
CRM for
that
that.
system
Hmm.
was really what made the difference and got us to the size we are today and continue to grow.
Yeah. So what do you think most businesses wait too long to build? Is that it?
I think a lot of businesses wait too long to have any kind of system in place. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of small businesses, I would say, and many of them are our clients, right? So I see it firsthand, right? They run on kind of
Yeah.
what I call the hair on fire system. It's every day you go in, you see what's wrong, you fix that. At the end of the day, you fix as many things as you can, and then you get tired and you go home and you come back the next morning and you start all over. What they don't
Yeah.
notice or recognize or address is the fact that most of those things that are breaking are the same things, breaking over and over in the same ways. And they don't have
Hmm.
a system to address those things, to create repeatable solutions that they can delegate to someone else, right? So the owner, just like I was that day when we, had the ransomware attack, everything's still on their shoulders. Everything is still down to what can the owner do and fix and solve and sell that day. And whatever that capacity is, that's where they tap out. And they may have some employees, but those employees don't have any effective training. They don't have any SOPs to follow. They aren't delegated any responsibility or authority. And so it always comes back to the owner. And once the owner's hair is burned enough for that day, they finally put the hat on and go back the next day. And it's the same drill over and over. And I think if they would stop and take a minute to figure out how can I prevent this from happening again? How can I make it not be me that has to put this fire out each day? They would quickly realize that the world can be a much better place than it is the way they currently operate. But for whatever reason, a lot of them just don't feel comfortable delegating, aren't willing to do it. They have to do everything. They're the only ones that can do it right in their own minds. And so they limit themselves to whatever they can personally endure in terms of pain every day. And that's as big as the company will get.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting perspective. Yeah. So speaking of that, what did you personally have to change as a leader when business could no longer rely on the relationships alone and you alone?
So one of the big things that I've always hated is HR stuff, right?
Hmm.
And when I was me and two employees or me and three employees, I never spent we didn't have a company handbook. I figured, look, I can tell you my expectations. If you come in a shirt with an off-color joke, I can laugh and then I can tell you, hey, probably don't wear that to the office next time with but or vacation was just, look, you want to take some time off, take some time off, or tell me when you're going to come back. We'll plan for that. Good. And I kept it very casual because I never wanted to be the kind of place that had a dress code and all these rules. But what you realize as you grow past the point of people that you personally know and manage directly day to day is you have to have that stuff in place, because if you don't, sooner or
Hmm.
later, somebody's going to take advantage of it, or there's going to be an HR rule, especially here in California, right? We've HR rules up the wazoo. You're going
Hmm.
to, you're going to cross the line unintentionally, not realize it, and get yourself in trouble. So one of the things I had to scale was that we had to have formal policies for how do you earn vacation, when do
Hmm.
you get to take time off, what can you wear to the office, what's appropriate to say, what's inappropriate. And it wasn't because we had so many bad employees, but it just became unmanageable without rules, because inevitably you'd have a
Yeah.
rule and then something would come up that was an exception. And do you make an exception or do you? So that was something that wasn't my personal leadership style, which was just to be like, hey, we're all adults, right? If you act like an adult and I act like an adult, we shouldn't have any problems.
It doesn't work that way.
But it doesn't work that way.
No.
So we had to develop and evolve an employee handbook and rules and policies and things that allowed me to get to the size that we are today without losing my mind, because what works with 3 or 4 or 5 people doesn't work with 30 or 40 people. And that was something I just had to accept and swallow and move on with. Although it's not how I like to operate, but it's how I have to operate effectively at the size that we
Yeah.
are.
And so you also were, it's at some point you were the sole operator. You were the one who was delivering a service, and you had admin people doing things for you. Um, so you were the bottleneck. You were
Yes.
building those relationships and all that other stuff that we talked about earlier. What was the hardest thing that for you to let go of when you had to move some of that responsibility away off your plate?
The hardest thing for me delegating was sales. Not that I didn't want to delegate it, but I could speak to a potential client. Look, hey, I've owned a business for all these years. You own a business. We're immediately connected on that level. And then we find some other places to find some common ground and rapport. And then I could naturally intuit what their problems were, what challenges they were facing as a business owner, because I was a business owner, and I could speak to that well, and I could craft a sales pitch that would fit them just because I was so in tune with where they were coming from, because I was in the same place.
Yeah.
Trying to train somebody else who was an employee to do sales, they didn't have that instant rapport. They didn't have that intuitive understanding of where that business owner was coming from and what challenges they face. So that was the hardest thing for me to take out of my head and put down in a process that I could teach someone else and
Mm.
be effective, right? The bookkeeping is fairly programmatic, right? There's steps, and I can teach you and you can troubleshoot
Yeah.
that pretty easily. A lot of the other things that we do admin wise, collecting data and data entry and setting up new client accounts and all that stuff is all fairly straightforward, and it's the
Mhm.
same steps from client to client, person to person. The sales piece felt to me a lot more variable, and you have to be good at reading the client. You have to be good at listening to what the client's saying, active listening and all that stuff. I found that much, much harder to be able to hand off at the same sort of level of effectiveness that I felt like I had as a salesperson, just because of
Yeah.
the nature of that job. Ultimately, I was able to find other people who could do it also, but that was the hardest thing for me. And of course, if I'm the only one that can sell, we're immediately limited to however much I can sell. So it has
Right.
to be delegated if you want to grow. But that was my biggest challenge.
Yeah. So are you involved in sales today?
I still do some, sometimes with the bigger clients or more complex clients or sort of
Hmm.
unique cases, but the sort of plain vanilla, this client needs some accounting help and they've got a pretty straightforward situation. I don't take those sales
Yeah.
calls anymore.
But you probably enjoy the more complex things too.
Yes, it's a challenge to, okay, what's different about what you've got? Can we be a good fit? How will we do it? How will we approach it that's different than what we normally do? And there's a definite satisfaction in getting a signed client, even to this day, even thousands of clients,
Hmm.
decades later. You get somebody, you have a good conversation, they agree to become a client and pay you money for your services. Yes. Okay. Still got it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So it's a
It's a
good
good
feeling.
feeling. Yeah. So I promised you that we'd be at about 40 minutes right here. We're at 42 minutes. Uh, as we wrap up, there's a few things, maybe one or two more things I want to ask you. Number one, what are three things someone could look at right now? Growth feels harder than it should.
So I would say if you're looking at your numbers, which you should on a regular basis, and you
Mhm.
should have a good feel for your numbers, even if you don't think of yourself as a numbers person, you have to be the one putting them together, but you should be looking at them, right? And you
Mhm.
should be looking not just at the today's numbers, but you should be looking at them over time. And you should be looking at those trends and what things are trending up and down, right? So if you're finding that you're getting fewer leads now than you used to, what's causing that drop in leads? If you've got the same number of leads, but you're not getting as many clients, what's causing that fall off in conversion, right? What's
Mhm.
different? And if you're getting the same number of leads and same number of conversions, but you're just not as profitable as you used to be, what's changed there? Have costs gone up? Have you had to do discounting to get those closes? And that's what's impacting
Mhm.
margins, right? What's changed? It's very hard to just look at numbers in isolation. You could give me your April P&L And I could look at that and say, but that doesn't tell me much, right? Let's look at the last 12 months P&L. Now I've got something to work with. I can see that sales have been going up, but profits have been going down. Well, here it is. Payroll has been steadily climbing, whatever it is. But now I can see what I need to focus on to troubleshoot to get back to where we were, or even improve on whatever the baseline was. So I would say, look at your numbers and look at them over time to spot those trends. Leads, sales, profit margin, those are three to immediately focus in on. If those all look good, then you can dive in further. But chances are at least one of those, if not all three, are giving you problems. If you're seeing a stagnation in growth or a decline in things, those are three places to immediately check into.
Yeah. Great advice. Matt, where can people connect with you, and do you have some resources you'd like to share? Or
Yeah, so the best place to find us is really on our website, capforge.com. It's got information about us, about our services. There's a ton of great stuff on there in terms of blogs and some videos I've done, and lots of general business advice to help you improve where you're at. And then of course, if you want some more specific advice, or there's things we can specifically help you for your situation with, there's a contact form. You can reach out. We're happy to set up an appointment, have a conversation, see if we can be of service somewhere. But that's the best place to find us, find out more about us. And there's a ton of free resources right on the website.
And I suppose they can find you on LinkedIn also.
I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter and YouTube, all over the place. But yeah, the website is probably the best place with the most specific info.
As you can see, folks listening, Matt knows his stuff. Reach out to him if you're in need, and if you're in need of some spot on advice. I know that he and his team can help you do that. Go ahead and check him out at capforge.com, right? Is that the right?
That's it.
Capforge.com, and check him out on LinkedIn. And remember, faith and action go hand in hand, so keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyan and Matt Remuzzi. Thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyan, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.